Jimmy Carter, the humble peanut farmer who rose to become the 39th President of the United States, left behind far more than his legacy of humanitarian work, despite living in a modest $167,000 home and famously flying commercial. Carter amassed a fortune that now stands at $10 million, a staggering sum for a man who once faced over $1 million in debt after leaving the White House. Unlike other former presidents who cashed in on luxury properties and speaking tours, Carter's money came from unexpected places, including decades of quiet generosity that might leave you questioning everything you thought about wealth. But where will this surprising fortune go, and why might it bring tears to his family's eyes? Some of the details will leave you absolutely stunned. It's hard to believe that Jimmy Carter, the man who spent so much of his life helping others, is no longer with us. On December 29, 2024, the former president and beloved humanitarian passed away at 100. His legacy is one of kindness, service, and dedication to making the world a better place. But there's something else about Carter's life that might surprise you. He left behind a fortune. Now, you might not think of Jimmy Carter and wealth in the same sentence. After all, he was known for his modesty and simple lifestyle, but his net worth at the time of his death was a surprising $10 million. That's a lot of money, especially for someone who spent most of his life in public service. So how did he do it? Let's take a closer look. Jimmy Carter's story began in Plains, Georgia, where he was born on October 1st, 1924. His father was a farmer and a businessman, and his mother was a nurse. Growing up in a small town, Carter learned the value of hard work early on. After finishing high school, he went on to attend the U.S. Naval Academy, where he graduated in 1946. That same year, he married Rosalind Smith, the love of his life. For a while, Carter served as a naval officer working on submarines and moving up to the rank of lieutenant. But in 1953, everything changed when his father passed away. Carter left his Navy career behind to return to Georgia and take over the family's peanut farm. It was a tough decision, but it set him on a path that would eventually lead to the presidency. At first, things weren't easy. The farm needed a lot of work, and Carter put in long hours to turn it around. He also got involved in his local community, serving on boards and committees that helped shape the area. By the time he entered politics, Carter had built a reputation as a hardworking, honest man who cared about the people around him. Fast forward to 1976, and Carter was elected the 39th President of the United States. He served one term, from 1977 to 1981, and made a lasting impact, particularly in the areas of human rights, energy policy, and peace negotiations. He didn't have an easy presidency. His time in office was marked by challenges like the Iran hostage crisis and economic struggles, but he stayed true to his values, always trying to do what he thought was right. After leaving the White House, Carter could have followed the path of many former presidents and focused on making money through speaking engagements and corporate connections. Instead, he dedicated himself to humanitarian work. He and Rosalind became champions of Habitat for Humanity, helping build homes for those in need. They also worked on global health initiatives, monitoring elections, and promoting peace. So with all this giving back, how did Carter build his $10 million fortune? It's a story of resilience, creates the ability to bounce back even when things looked bleak. You might think that someone who spent most of their life in public service wouldn't have much chance to earn millions. But Carter found ways to turn his setbacks into successes. Let's start with one of the biggest financial challenges he faced. When Carter became president in 1976, he made a decision that showed just how much he cared about doing the right thing. He put his peanut farm and other businesses into a blind trust. This meant that while he was in the White House, he wasn't involved in running the businesses at all. Instead, a law firm in Atlanta managed them for him. This wasn't just a kind gesture, it was to make sure that Carter's decisions as president wouldn't be influenced by his personal finances. It was an admirable move, but it came with some unintended consequences. When Carter left the White House in 1981, he discovered that the businesses he had left behind were in serious trouble. Years of drought and poor management had taken a toll. The peanut farm, once the backbone of the Carter family's finances, was deeply in debt. In fact, Carter found himself more than $1 million in the hole. It's hard to imagine coming back from serving as president to face that kind of financial blow. But Carter didn't let it defeat him. He and Rosalind made the tough decision to sell their business to cover the debt. Starting over financially wasn't easy, but Carter didn't waste time feeling sorry for himself. Instead, he rolled up his sleeves and got to work. He realized that his experiences, insights, and the life he had led could be valuable not just to him, but to people around the world, so he began writing. Carter didn't just dabble in writing, he fully committed to it over the course of his life. He authored more than 30 books. These covered everything from his childhood memories in An Hour Before Daylight to his thoughts on faith and living faith, and even controversial topics like the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in Palestine, peace, not apartheid. His books gave readers a glimpse into his personal life, his beliefs, and his vision for the world. They were widely read and brought in significant royalties. Writing became one of Carter's most consistent sources of income, and it also allowed him to share his story with millions of people. But Carter didn't stop with writing. He also became a sought-after public speaker. After all, how many people can say they've been a farmer, a naval officer, a president, and a humanitarian? Carter's speeches were in demand at universities, conferences, and events around the world. He didn't shy away from tough topics, sharing his views on human rights, global conflicts, and the lessons he'd learned from his time in politics. His speaking fees ranged from $50,000 to $100,000 per event, which added up over the years. These speeches weren't just about earning money. They were also a way for Carter to continue spreading his message of peace and service while writing, and speaking played a huge role in rebuilding his finances. Carter also benefited from his presidential pension. Like all former presidents, Carter received a yearly pension, $27,800 to be exact. He also received additional funding for staff and security, which allowed him to continue his work safely. And effectively, these benefits gave Carter some financial stability, but he didn't rely on them alone. Carter also made smart investments over time. Real estate was one of the areas where he chose to put his money. While he didn't go for extravagant properties, he made solid choices that helped grow his wealth. He also invested in stocks, which provided him with a steady income. These investments weren't flashy, but they were effective, giving Carter and Rosalynn a financial cushion that allowed them to live comfortably, even though he built a net worth of $10 million. Carter didn't spend his years chasing luxury or showing off his success. Instead, he chose to live in a modest two-bedroom ranch house in Plains, Georgia, a home he had built himself in 1961. Long before his presidency, that house became his sanctuary, a quiet place far from the glitz and glamour you might expect from a former president. The house wasn't fancy by any means. Public records valued it at just $167,600. So low it was joked that the armored Secret Service vehicles outside were worth more than the home itself. Today, the home's value is estimated at $239,700, still far below Georgia's median home price of $3,268. 5-hour drive south of Atlanta. Carter didn't need more than that. He lived there with Rosalynn, his wife, of over 75 years, until her death in 2023, and it's also where he spent his final days. Carter's lifestyle in Plains was as down-to-earth as it gets. Weekends weren't filled with lavish dinners or high-profile events. Instead, Carter and Rosalynn often dined with neighbors using paper plates and sharing bargain brand wine. Yes, paper plates. It's hard to picture, isn't it, a former president sitting at a kitchen table eating off a disposable plate, but that's who Jimmy Carter was. He never saw himself as better than anyone else. He also embraced the little things in life, like making his own yogurt. That's right, homemade yogurt was part of his routine. Carter even shopped for some of his clothes at the local Dollar General in 2008. Or when the store opened in Plains, Carter was there to cut the ribbon. He wasn't just a customer, he was a proud supporter of the small businesses in his community. And when it came to travel, Carter didn't charter private jets or demand first-class service. He often flew commercial, blending in with everyday passengers. Carter's frugality wasn't because he couldn't afford more. It was a choice. He simply didn't see the point in chasing wealth or luxury. In a 2018 interview, he said, "It just never had been my ambition to be rich." That quote sums him up perfectly. Carter wasn't interested in the big houses, fancy cars, or sprawling estates that other former presidents owned. For him, happiness came from living simply and staying true to his roots. To understand just how unique Carter's lifestyle was, it helps to look at what other former presidents have done. Take Donald Trump, for example. After leaving the White House, Trump returned to Mar-a-Lago, his luxury resort in Florida, which Forbes valued at around $325 million. Barack Obama owns multiple multi-million-dollar properties, including $1 billion worth of real estate, and he sometimes hangs out with Red Square NCS and the White House coordinators. Today, Parag entertains hosts on his $1 million mansion in Washington, D.C., and a $12 million estate on Martha's Vineyard. Even Bill Clinton, who left office in debt, quickly turned things around with lucrative speeches and book deals, eventually buying homes worth millions in New York and Washington, D.C. Carter's approach couldn't have been more different. He didn't try to keep up with anyone or prove his success through material possessions. Instead, he focused on the things that mattered most to him: family, faith, and community. His home in PLS wasn't just a place to live, it was a symbol of his values. It showed that even someone who had been to the highest office in the land could live simply and stay grounded. But Carter's simplicity didn't mean he lacked skills or hobbies. He loved working with his hands. Over the years, he built furniture, fixed appliances, and even made some of his own clothes. These weren't just chores to him, they were acts of creativity and self-reliance. Carter took pride in being able to do things himself, and it's one of the many things that made him so relatable even as he aged. Carter didn't let go of his hands-on approach to life. When he wasn't busy with Habitat for Humanity, helping build homes for those in need, he could often be found at his workbench crafting something or repairing an old tool. His love for manual work wasn't about saving money. It was about staying active and finding joy in the process. Carter's modest lifestyle extended to how he managed his money. While he earned a significant amount from writing books and giving speeches, much of that money went back into the causes he cared about. He and Rosalind founded the Carter Center in 1982, which focuses on promoting peace, fighting disease, and improving human rights around the world. Carter often donated his speaking fees to the center, showing once again that for him, money was a means to an end, not something to hoard or show off. It's rare to see someone with Carter's level of fame and influence live such an unassuming life, but that's what made him special. His modesty wasn't an act, it was who he was, even as a former president. And Nobel Peace Prize winner Carter stayed connected to the things that really mattered: his faith, his family, and his community. He didn't need a mansion or a private island to feel fulfilled. His simple ranch house in Plains, Georgia was enough. And that little house with its worn floors and handmade touches tells you everything you need to know about the kind of person Jimmy Carter was. But while Carter's financial success is impressive, there's another part of his story that shows who he really was. It's not about millions of dollars or bestseller books. It's about a life centered on generosity, love, and service. Jimmy Carter may have built a fortune, but he never let money define him. Instead, he used what he had to help others, leaving behind a legacy far greater than numbers in a bank account. So what happens to his wealth now that he's gone? Well, Jimmy Carter never publicly stated where his inheritance would go. His track record gives us some clues. A significant portion of his remaining wealth will likely be directed toward charitable causes. After all, that's what he and Rosalind always prioritized. The Carter Center will probably be a major beneficiary, continuing the work they started together. The Carter also believed in helping their community in Plains, Georgia. Their love for their hometown was clear in the way they lived and gave back. Plains isn't a flashy place, it's small and quiet, but it's where the Carters felt most at home. Supporting the people and organizations in PLS has always been important to them. And it wouldn't be surprising if some of their wealth stays right there, benefiting the town they loved. Now, let's not forget the personal side of Jimmy Carter's life, his family. He and Rosalind raised 4 children, John, James, Donald, and Amy. Between their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, the Carter family is large, with 22 descendants in total. While Carter's estate is modest compared to other former presidents, there's a good chance that some of his wealth will go to his family. But knowing Jimmy Carter, it's safe to assume that any inheritance will come with a message: to use what they receive wisely and to continue the family's tradition of giving back. Family was central to Jimmy Carter's life, not just in the financial sense, but in the way he lived every single day. At the heart of it all was his extraordinary bond with his wife, Rosalind, a love story that spanned more than 7 decades, for 77 years. Their marriage was a partnership built on mutual respect, shared values, and unwavering devotion. Even in his final days, Carter expressed that he was ready to see Rosalind again. A sentiment that spoke volumes about how deeply intertwined their lives had been. By the time Jimmy was in the Navy, their relationship had blossomed into a lifelong romance. They married in 1946 when Jimmy was 21 and Rosalind was 18, embarking on a journey that would take them from a peanut farm to the White House and beyond. Throughout their lives, Jimmy and Rosalind's love was evident not just in grand gestures, but in the small, everyday moments they shared. One of the most touching examples is a letter Jimmy wrote to Rosalind during his time in the Navy. In it, he confessed that every time he returned home, he fell in love with her all over again. "My darling, every time I have ever been away from you, I have been thrilled when I return to discover just how wonderful you are," he wrote. That deep affection never wavered, even as they faced the challenges of public life and personal hardship. Their marriage was a source of strength and joy for both of them. In a 2015 interview, Jimmy shared the secret to their lasting relationship. "Rosalind has been the foundation for my entire enjoyment of life. First of all, it's best to choose the right woman, which I did. And secondly, we give each other space to do our own things." He went on to explain how they always tried to reconcile before going to sleep at night and found shared activities that brought them closer, whether they were traveling the world for humanitarian work or simply spending time together in PLS. They made the most of every moment. One sweet tradition that defined their relationship was their use of the phrase ISA, TG, short for I love you, the goodest. It was a simple, playful expression of their affection, something they exchanged in letters, phone calls, and even emails over time. It became a family saying, passed down to their children and grandchildren. Little things like this revealed the warmth and humor that characterized their bond, a love that was as strong in its 77th year as it was in the first in his final days. Carter's thoughts were with Rosalind. As his grandson Jason Carter said during his funeral, Jimmy often spoke about his Jason, eagerly looked forward to seeing Rosalind again. He shared that he was ready to be with her, showing how close they had always been. Their love was more than just romantic, it was about teamwork and wanting to improve the world together. When Rosalind passed away, Jimmy honored her memory by wearing a blanket with her picture to her memorial service, a small but meaningful way to show his deep love and sorrow. A year later, on December 29, 2024, Jimmy died at home in Plains. By January 9th, 2025, he was buried next to Rosalind. This marked the end of their long love story. Their gravesite on the land they built together represents a life filled with love, family, and service. When we think about Carter's financial legacy, we can't ignore the values that shaped both his and Rosalind's lives. For them, money was never just about wealth. Jimmy and Rosalind Carter used their skills and resources to help others and improve the world instead of focusing on personal wealth or comfort. Through the Carter Center, Habitat for Humanity, and the values they teach their family, their legacy is built on love, generosity, and a strong commitment to making a positive impact.